Deadpool 2 is the sequel to the smash hit from 2016. I mean, one of the highest grossing rated R movies of all time. Nate, people know the character Deadpool. They know the first movie. We both loved it.
Loved it.
Thought it was a breath of fresh air into what was kind of becoming a stale genre.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we both liked about the first one was it was a very minimalist plot, a smaller comic book movie, smaller scale. But with the sequel, they went in bigger scale, kind of a bigger story. Yeah. How do you think they handled it?
I'm a little iffy on the way they handle this. We are not going to go into any spoilers here.
Right, we'll be spoiler free.
Yeah, keep that in mind. With this one, it felt still on a fairly small scale, but just with a bigger plot with the addition of Cable and the time traveling aspect of that. But in this one, I felt like they were trying to juggle a little too much. What about you?
Yeah, I felt like there was some times in this movie where I felt like things needed to get going, and they weren't.
Yes.
It may not be the storytelling that I had a problem with when it comes to that. Maybe the pacing of the story, like the rate that they unfolded the story. Yeah. Sometimes it seemed a little bit slow.
Yeah, for me, it was really mostly the first act felt a little bit slow to get going, and it also didn't. We've already sort of been spoiled with Deadpool 1, with that pacing and with that fast-paced dialogue and with that fast-paced comedy and that fourth wall breaking. With this, they had big shoes to fill.
Yeah, it was a tough act to follow.
It was, and in this one, for me, at times, just some of it felt a tad forced.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. There were moments where it did feel a little bit forced, but that's not to say this movie doesn't have its merits. I mean, once again, Ryan Reynolds knocks it out of the park as Deadpool.
He is Deadpool.
Yeah, he perfectly emulates the character. Mm-hmm. And, Josh Brolin just nailing it as far as being a Marvel villain, first with Thanos and Infinity War, and I really liked him as Cable in this one.
I liked him as Cable as well. I felt like he fit the persona perfectly. I actually could have used a little bit more Cable.
Me too.
And that's one thing that also struggles with the first act, is just there's not enough Cable in the first act for me. And there's a lot of new additions. There's the kid that...
Julian Dennison plays Fire Fist.
Yeah, and like the essential plot of this is Deadpool and Cable are both after this kid, and it's almost like Terminator-esque. It's like reverse Terminator. And the kid didn't bother me.
No.
And but once again, he didn't have much to work with, and that's where some of the faults lay with this movie, is that it seemed like it had aspirations that it couldn't quite live up to with a lot of ideas in this film.
And outside of the minimalist plot, I think a big appeal with the first movie was there were some really good action moments, and the movie was hilarious. A lot of it was the surprise, the shock value of not only was it a rated R movie, it was a hard R comic book movie, the likes of which we had never seen before.
The reason people know Deadpool now is because of that movie, not because of the comic book so much.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So how do you think the action and comedy stacks up compared to the first one in this movie?
Once again, it just didn't quite live up to the first one. The action, there is some really good action in this, and there is some really crazy gore that happens. This one, I think this one's a little bit gorier than the first one, and I think it's good, but the action never felt very hard hitting for me, although entertaining, and I thought there was some really cool moments, some really funny moments with action. The first one, that freeway scene, and seemed like really hard hitting, crazy nonstop things happening in action, and I didn't get as much of that in this one.
Yeah, I think the action in this movie is solid, but there's nothing stand out like that, freeway scene in the first one. I'd say the action in the third act, like the final battle, I think really that was really the highlight of the action, but I felt like the first movie had punctuations, like they punctuated an act with a great action scene, end of the first, end of the second, in the final battle. Yeah. Whereas with this one, some of the action scenes, it was just, I didn't really feel like there was the stakes. I didn't feel like I was in the moment of the action.
Right.
And as far as the comedy, I would say that this movie is 80% as funny as the first one. Okay. Not as many jokes landed as they did with the first one, but there were some really funny jokes.
Yes.
There were some, just with going in with Deadpool and his fourth wall breaking, there were some good digs at the MCU, there were some good digs at the DCEU.
Yes.
And just movies in general, callbacks to the first movie. So there were those funny moments. But there were jokes in this one that didn't land more so than some of the jokes that didn't land in the first one.
Yeah, there was some jokes. There were some scenes that ended on kind of an awkward note, where it's seemed like that should have been a laugh, and then it just goes to the next scene. It almost seemed like the actors knew it wasn't going to be funny, and they're moving on, and they just sort of kept going with it. I agree with you. There were a lot of very, very funny jokes in this movie. Some that didn't land. A lot of digs at all different types of, pop culture when it comes to film, to the point where some people might not get a lot of them. So I'm trying to separate this movie from the first one because, like I said, it's big shoes to fill, but also the first one had the advantage of getting to know Deadpool and the comedy that comes with getting to know this character, that comes with him becoming Deadpool. And, with the intro scene and with the opening credits and everything, it almost felt like they had to up the ante a little bit, but it's kind of hard to when you already, are cranking it to 11 on the first one.
It was a valiant effort, and this isn't a bad movie by any means.
No.
But it's just that with the first one, you walk into this one with expectations. So I was just a little let down. Overall, I enjoyed my time with this movie, but I had higher hopes for it.
Yeah, I had incredibly high hopes for it too, and I was let down with just some of the plot decision making that they did in this movie. It sort of goes with the feeling of this movie, where I'm like, this is cool. Not holy crap, this is amazing.
Yeah.
This is cool.
Yeah, it didn't knock my socks off like the first one, but there is another cameo that I won't even allude to. I'm sure you know which one we're talking about, where someone closes doors at the end of this cameo.
Yeah.
That had me rolling.
That
was great. That was just like, and that's where that movie really felt like, that was the part of the movie where it felt like Deadpool, and I felt like that's where it was reaching its heights as the potential of it. So there were those moments where it's like, oh man, that was great. But you're right, a lot of moments like that was cool.
Buffs.
Okay, Nate, I think it's fair to say that we had high hopes walking in this one. We were let down a little bit. Why don't you go ahead and put your score on this movie?
Yeah, I think Deadpool fans will enjoy it. They'll leave happy with this. It's not a disappointment by any means. It's just didn't live up to all the hype that I wanted it to. I think I wanted more out of this, but I still enjoyed my time with this. So I'm going to go 7.5 out of 10. It's still a passable movie. I really like it. I think a lot of people will enjoy it. Just a little bit of a letdown. What about you?
I'm right there with you. I'm going to give Deadpool 2 a 7.5 out of 10. I feel like just between Josh Brolin's performance, Ryan Reynolds, and even Zazie Beetz as Domino, I think they're all great. And there's enough of this movie to enjoy, especially for Deadpool fans. But if you're walking into expecting to get blown away like the first movie, you'll be a little bit let down.
Yeah.
Buffs.
All right, guys, so that's it for our review of Deadpool 2. What'd you guys think of the movie? What'd you think of the new characters? Why don't you go ahead and leave a comment down below?
Yeah, next week we'll be walking into the theater with a little bit of, not
We
so
won't have
higher
as high
expectations. No, with Solo. So we'll see how that movie is. I'm hoping that it'll surprise us.
Yeah, my expectations, all it can do is surprise or, please me. It can't disappoint.
No, that's true. So we'll bring you that review next week. But wherever you are and whoever you're with,
Watch more movies.